How do you deal with disappointment? How do you deal with it? Do you get grumpy? Oh, are you like, whatever, keep rolling through the punches? Why don't we dive into that? What's the best way? What's the most effective way for me to navigate the trenches, right? The journey of disappointment. And I want to start with an interesting place. A relationship between disappointment and awareness. Disappointment and expectations, right? More than likely, disappointment for most of us connects to what expectations we set for ourselves, right? So if I have this expectation that I want to graduate from college in 4 years, and I do not graduate from college in 4 years, I'm likely to feel disappointed. If I have an expectation that I want to go ask somebody out, right? This really beautiful person, and I want them to say yes, and I get there and they say no, I'm likely to feel disappointed. So we see that relationship, right? We see the relationship between disappointment and expectation. So then awareness is in there too. Because if we're able to become aware of what's the most effective process that we can take to be able to have healing and support and nurture, then we can reduce disappointment, and it doesn't have to be this really murky negative thing. So I'll give you an example of that. If I have this expectation that I want to graduate in 4 years, right? And all I do is I just keep it like that. I say black and white, my expectation is I'm going to graduate in 4 years. And then I don't graduate in 4 years, I'm likely to feel disappointed. So we're good there so far. Awareness comes in if I think to myself and I go, well, Juan, do you know what you're going to study? I'm not really sure. Well, then more than likely, it's probably going to mean that you may not graduate in 4 years because you're not exactly set on what you're going to study and things can change. Well, that makes sense. So now if I don't graduate in 4 years, I know why, because I practice self-awareness. And that's just one simple strategy to use there. Another one that is commonly overlooked is external variables. We never know what's going to happen. I could enter graduate school or undergrad, and who knows what's going to happen in 1 or 2 years. What if someone in the family gets sick and I've got to take over some ownership there? What if I get sick? What if I, don't have money to pay for school and I got to pick up a job? Those are variables that we want to be able to, be accountable to. We want to think about so that it builds our self-awareness. And when we build that self-awareness, it reduces our disappointment when it comes to the expectation that we originally set for ourselves. So hopefully all that makes sense so far. I want to go into today some key ways for us to deal with disappointments, but I wanted to share that first with you so that you have an understanding of how this process navigates. All right, so the first one is being comfortable with disappointment. So how can I be comfortable with disappointment? I want you to think about that. Let's do this together. I want us to think about a point in our life where we were disappointed by something. And the one for college, that one was a real one for me. And, no humor intended, but it took me more than 6 years to get out of an undergraduate. But I went in there with the expectation to get done in 4 years. I'm not sure if that was just from a cultural component, being a first generation college student, migrating here from the Dominican Republic, having that, cultural immigrant expectation of be a professional, push forward. Look at what through the family, through generations went through poverty, and now you're in America, and I'm not kidding you. This is the mentality. This is something that was really connected to me, and I went in and I went to school, and the idea was I'm going to be a doctor, right? And maybe if you're out there, if you're coming from a cultural background like mine, you're able to connect there, and it took way longer than 6 years. It took longer than 6 years. I navigated many different majors. I was in and out, trying to figure out what I was going to do, lost in this journey. And I felt disappointed many times. I felt disappointed because I felt like I was letting myself down. I felt like I was letting my family down. I felt like I was letting almost my culture down. Thoughts of, Juan, your parents came from a whole different country. Your dad came here in his 30s, He was a trash man, right? He was right in the back of it. And later, of course, worked and supported the family in different ways, owning his own business. But those type of thoughts, they really pushed me to have this, and I hope I don't tear up on you, having this idea of, I got to meet my expectation. If I don't, it is a disappointment. And that was a mentality that I held. Maybe it was A-type personality, but I held that. And then kind of looking back, I think it's important for us to build that, that sense of comfort there with not meeting our expectation that we have. And what that would mean is me kind of sitting back with, if I connected the dots. Obviously, we can connect the dots in the past and use that for the future. We haven't developed a time machine yet for us to go back in time. But being able to now connect the dots, it would be that I sit with myself and I say, how does it feel that you're not meeting that expectation of getting there in 4 years? And it's taking longer. And was that expectation yours? Did you set that, Juan? Or was it set for you? And are you happy? Does that expectation bring you contentment and satisfaction? So I would have done that whole process, and I encourage you to do that too, because what it does is it builds a sense of self-awareness, and it also allows us not just to skip past it. We don't want to skip past the feelings, because if we have an expectation and we don't reach it, and we experience disappointment, and we don't go into this process that I'm sharing with you now, where we allow ourselves to talk about what's happening, reflect on what's happening, to build comfort with disappointment. If we just avoid it or skip right past all of those feelings, something really interesting happens, something really obvious happens. Think about a soda can. I get a soda can, I shake it. Right. What's going to happen when I pop that lid? Is it going to be a smooth, gentle pour of Coca-Cola? Or is that shit just going to go everywhere? It's going to go everywhere, right? And that's the body. If I have an expectation and I don't meet it, and I feel that disappointment, and I skip past reflecting on that process, and I avoid all of those feelings, then more than likely my body is going to do its job. My mind is going to do its job. It's going to shake like that soda can, and at some point it's going to all explode. And it may come out with anger. It may come out with depression. It may come out with some sort of emotional mood reaction. My sleep can be off. I can feel numb. My appetite could be really, just really screwed up in different ways. And then I could be looking around and going, well, what's going on? Why do I feel this way? What's happening? And it could all be centered towards this conversation that we're having here. Next point that we're going to go into when it comes to dealing with disappointment, building that comfort, is leaning into feeling okay that you feel disappointed. Have you ever done that? Like, have you felt disappointed and then you leaned into it, like that song? Is it Bill Withers? Hopefully I'm pronouncing that name right. Hopefully that's the artist. Lean on me. Man, I'll tell you, I love that song. I'll put that on, and story for a whole different day. But at least a little bit about my music taste. So have you ever done that? Have you ever leaned into feeling okay that you feel disappointed? So you got this experience in your life and you feel really disappointed. And you let yourself sit there and you ask yourself, well, how am I feeling? Of course you're feeling disappointed, right? We know that. But let's do a little therapy in there. We'll sprinkle a little bit of that. You've probably seen Titanic, the movie. If you haven't, imagine there's a big iceberg. And most icebergs, we just see the tip, right? The tip kind of sticking out like that. I don't want to hit my mic. And then underneath it is massive. But it's underneath the water, so we can't see all of that, massive amount of ice. Right now, the tip is, I feel disappointed. Underneath there, there's a lot more going on, isn't there, my friends? So whenever you lean into it, what you can do is you can draw that out on a sheet of paper. You could put on the disappointment on top, and then on the very bottom, you could put everything else that connects to it. And then what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to have space to connect with it. And that is extremely healing. It helps us build that healthy relationship with disappointment. Next point that I want us to get into is, and this one connects right with it, is grieving that process of disappointment. Grieving whatever that disappointment may be. So you go to an example. Let's say that you're trying to get a new job and you don't get the job, so you're disappointed. We talked about the importance of connecting with it, of leaning with it, but also grieving with it. There's a process of grief that connects to this. And that could be that you sit in the car and you cry. Nothing wrong with that. That's powerful. That's beautiful. That's vulnerability. Being able to do that. Being able to give yourself grief. or after it, going for a walk and just kind of sitting there on a bench. For some, that this may not be their style, but for others it could be. You sit there and you reflect and you think about, those thoughts and those feelings, and that's your grief process going through it. You could write a letter, to that disappointment, to that moment in life. And then the last one that I want to share with you, I think this one's pretty powerful here, so I appreciate you hanging with me, is being able to look at your expectations, right? Because this is about dealing with disappointment. So it connects to our expectations, and all of that interconnects with awareness. Being able to look at your expectations with a lens of the variables that you can control and a lens of the variables that you cannot control. Right? So imagine you have glasses. You got one here, this lens here sees what I control. This lens here, all the shit that I can't control. And let's keep it simple. Let's say that, I've got this thing that I want to do, right? And we were talking about college for a while. Let's just keep that one. So you want to complete it in a certain amount of time, or you want to complete whatever it may be. You could fit your example in there, of course. In this lens here, right, the one that says control, that you could show up to the classroom, you could show up to life. That if you fall down, you can get back up. That you could learn and grow. That the mistakes do not define you. Right? So you have a lot of things that you can control. But then there's things we can't control. And I want you to think about what just happened, right? At the time of this video, we're about a year, out after COVID. That's something that we weren't in control of. And that's something that more than likely really threw a big ass curveball to what your life was looking like. The expectations you had and its relationship with disappointment. But we had no control over that. And it's important for us to be vulnerable in that moment and to know that, though I'm in this process or this path, here's the variables that I can't control, or I hope to control, right? That's a nice word there. And then here's all the things that I can't control. We use the example of COVID, but it could be the weather. It could be that we get sick. It could be that we feel burnt out, so we need a break. It could be that, we can't show up here because we got to get a second job to be able to pay for certain things. A child comes into the picture. We lose someone close to us. All of these variables there we cannot control. And it's important for us to be open to that conversation. That what it does is it helps us accept disappointment. It helps us to be vulnerable with it. Because I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to find something, right? With everything that was shared today, we're all trying to find something when it comes to dealing with disappointment. How do I want to deal with disappointment? How do you want to deal with disappointment? If I ask myself that, how do I want to deal with disappointment? I don't want disappointment to break me down. I don't want disappointment to stop me from living my best life. I don't want disappointment to create this inner voice in my mind that makes me attack myself. I don't want disappointment to define me in some sort of negative way. And I can keep going, and maybe you can too. It's important for us to know that. How do we want to deal with disappointment? So that the information in this video, you're able to apply it effectively. I appreciate you spending time with me. I hope that you were able to learn. I hope that you're able to grow. Let me know what you think. Connect with me. Let's share some dialogue. Let's talk to each other. Continue to do all the things that you're doing. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.